Hi everyone. So in lab number 2, we're going to be investigating aldehydes and ketones. So aldehydes and ketones are both functional groups that contain an oxygen, and there are several functional groups that contain one oxygen. So we've got them here. So there's an alcohol, contains this OH group connected to a carbon. There's an ether, so the oxygen in between two carbons here. An aldehyde, we've got a carbon double bond oxygen, and that carbon has at least one bond here to a hydrogen, and then this R group here is in an aldehyde. It can either be a hydrogen or more commonly it would be the carbon chain. And then a ketone, so in a ketone we've got a carbon double bond oxygen, and both R and R prime here must be carbons for it to be a ketone. So both an aldehyde and a ketone have this carbon double bond oxygen, and this is known as a carbonyl group. So carbon double bond oxygen, which you can either write the carbon in like that or just have this line structure here. So carbon double bond oxygen. The difference between the aldehyde and the ketone is this hydrogen here. So an aldehyde contains at least one hydrogen there bonded to the carbon of that carbonyl group. So these aldehydes and ketones have different properties, and there's a variety of functional group tests that were developed to try and differentiate between molecules as containing either aldehydes or ketones. And so we're going to look at 4 of these functional group tests today. So the first one of these, the 2,4-dinitrophenylhydrazine, I'm just going to call that the DNP test. And so this one is going to give a positive result for all aldehydes and ketones. Okay, so if you know that a molecule contains one oxygen in it, so it could be either an alcohol, an ether, an aldehyde, or a ketone. And so alcohols and ethers would give a negative test for the negative result for the DNP test, whereas aldehydes and ketones would give a positive result to this. So this would be one way of determining, right, the molecule contains either an aldehyde or a ketone. We're able to rule out an alcohol and ether. The second test there is the Tollens test. So in this one, aldehydes are oxidized, silver ions are reduced to give a silver mirror. So the presence of a silver mirror is a positive result in that test, and so that would indicate that the molecule contains an aldehyde. The third test then is Benedict's test. So in this one, aliphatic aldehydes are oxidized, we'll get a positive result, whereas ketones and aromatic aldehydes would give a negative result. So an aromatic aldehyde contains this benzene ring here connected to the aldehyde group. So that would be an aromatic aldehyde. That would give a negative result, and a ketone would give a negative result in that. But an aliphatic aldehyde would give a positive result in the Benedict's test. And the fourth test we're doing is the iodoform test. So in this one, a methyl ketone gives a positive result here, which is a yellow precipitate. So a methyl ketone has just got this methyl group, or this CH3 group, attached to this carbonyl carbon here. Okay, so that's an example there of a methyl ketone. So if it's a ketone but not a methyl ketone, would give a negative result on the iodoform test, and an aldehyde would also give a negative result there on that iodoform test. So you'll be dealing with 4 compounds in this experiment, so 4 of them of which you know their structure, and then you'll have one unknown. And the idea of the lab is that you try and determine what the unknown is, so based upon the results of these tests. So formaldehyde, so this is an aldehyde, and this is an aliphatic aldehyde. Okay. Benzaldehyde, so this is also an aldehyde, has this carbon double bond oxygen with a hydrogen here, so this is an aldehyde. This is an aromatic aldehyde, so it has this aromatic ring or this benzene ring here, so we've got an aromatic aldehyde. The next one here, 3-pentanone, so pent, it's got 5 carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this ketone group here is on carbon number 3. So that's a ketone, but it's not a methyl ketone. It doesn't have just the 1 carbon at the end, so these are ethyl groups here with 2 carbons. So it's a ketone, but it's not a methyl ketone. And then the last compound here, so this is acetone. This is a ketone, and it is a methyl ketone. So depending upon the sort of functional groups here, you'll get either positive or negative results in these tests. So what you're required to do before you come into the lab is to fill out this table, and you need to be able to predict which compounds are going to give either a positive result or a negative result on each test. So I'll just do a couple here with you. So for formaldehyde, so this is an aliphatic aldehyde, and so for the Tollens test, all aldehydes and ketones would give a positive result. So you would expect aldehyde to give a positive result on that Tollens test, and that a positive result on that Tollens test would be a silver mirror being produced on your test tubes. For Benedict's test is going to give a positive result for the aliphatic aldehydes, and you can see there, so formaldehyde is an aliphatic aldehyde, so you expect a positive result there for the Benedict's test. The iodoform test, so this one was for methyl ketones. Formaldehyde is not a methyl ketone, so you would expect a negative result on the iodoform test. And then lastly, the DNP test, this is for all aldehydes and ketones. So you would expect formaldehyde to give a positive result on that one because it's an aldehyde. All aldehydes and ketones will give a positive result on this DNP test. So you can fill out the rest of the table based upon the expected results. So when you actually go in the lab and do it, might not perfectly match up, but that's fine. Okay, so there's our 4 compounds there. So formaldehyde, aliphatic aldehyde, benzaldehyde is an aromatic aldehyde, 3-pentanone is a ketone but not a methyl ketone, acetone is a ketone and it is a methyl ketone. In your workbook you also have to complete this table here. So all of the compounds in this table will be either aldehydes or ketones, and you're probably going to have to do some research here. So either Google or various searching there on the internet, or you can look at the Merck index here. So this is also a very handy index in terms of trying to look up these structures. So from the name here, cinnamaldehyde, you'll be able to look up its structure, so you can draw the structure in there, determine whether that molecule contains either an aldehyde or a ketone. Sometimes in its name you can actually work it out. Cinnamaldehyde, that would probably be a pretty good indication that it contains an aldehyde functional group. And then I want you to look up where that compound is found. So what source, where would it come from, whether it's a plant, whether it's, and so on. And then its typical use. So cinnamaldehyde, what is it typically used for? And so the next one here would be some compound. We're going to work it out. So we're told that it comes from the camphor tree and that it's used as an inhalant. So from that information there, you should be able to work out what the compound is, draw its structure, and then have a look at the structure and determine whether or not it contains an aldehyde or a ketone. So continue doing that for the rest of that table.